Some souls I wouldn't mind paying for. Also, I don't know, like, the last thing I did was... The last thing I did. The iron... I almost totally forgot. The iron crud. The iron... Oh, we went to the castle. Drangelic. Yeah. Okay, I see. The Iron Keep. I'm like, what is it called?
Thank you kindly.
I have too many life gems. Alright, let's go. Iron Keep. Hope you like a big night. I do. Am I gonna regret that? Can't remember the last thing. Is it here? But what was the last thing I did? What is this question mark? Oh, I've forgotten everything. Is that question mark the one that I found? Is this the last place we were? Oh wait, we were doing that, the elevator. Right. The elevator. And I was exploring all that. Oh, after you visit the castle, they reveal every bonfire you are missing. Really? Oh, what was that? Okay, we don't need to go that way though. That goes to a dead end, I think. Did you know that the day of rest, Church Day, was originally on Saturday? They moved it to convince the Roman Emperor they were converting to switch. Really? I thought it was in the Bible. Unbelievable. I've been lied to. Have we been in here? Key required. Okay, I don't have the key yet. I see. Don't know what happened up there. I know I tried to go on this elevator and then I fell off. From memory. I did something real dumb. I just fell off. The elevator, yes. Yeah, I can. Is that good to go? I don't know, it's good to go. I know I've been up this elevator before, and we went in a room and there was that guy that was in the wall guarding a door. Right? It's in here. So we went in there. Do I have to go in there again? That's the top of the elevator. I mean, top of the elevator, top of the ladder. I think there was something at the top of the elevator and I didn't go up there. Yeah, definitely a lot more people. There's a lot of people that are also, they were brought up Christian, they did the whole Christian thing, the Catholic thing, or whatever. And then when they got older, it's like, it means nothing to them. That's just how they were brought up. Yeah, there is no retention for it. Did Christians ever try to recruit you in uni? No. Was that a thing? What the hell is that? That was a thing. Oh, that's never happened to me. There's someone in here. Can I speak to them? What is this room? They tried recruiting you since high school. That's so weird. The only time I've ever been trying to, like, get recruited into Christianity would be like a Jehovah's Witness or something. But not in many years. There's stuff in here, but not the way forward. No key to the embedded in your inventory. I swear things are moving in this room. The lighting on these chests are weird. Yeah, Jehovah's Witness is just weird. The whole Portuguese Christian versus English Christianity and Shogun still confuses you. Oh, really? Oh, this is where the skill respec is. Okay, well, what's the way forward then? It has nothing to do with this section. Am I meant to hit this? No, I missed. Yeah, key to King's Passage sounds useful. I guess we just don't have a key. I guess. A game for me to play? I was thinking playing either Ronin or Wulong. I'm sorry, I'll leave him alone. Where was that door? Is it here? Because there was a key there to King's Passage. I don't even know what that is. Is it this door? Oh, okay. Alright. Have I bought the boss here? I fought a boss. There was like an archer and something. It was like two enemies. I haven't fought. I think there's a knight or something coming up. Enemy horde. Be wary of boulder. Alright, we're running. Yeah, the Dragon Riders. That was the last boss I think. Ooh, hello. Alright, we haven't done this guy. Hell yeah. Boss time. Do I remember this? No. I'm gonna have a horde after me. After I've done this. Fight. Oh no, what's that? Oh, an electric sword. Okay, got ya. Oh yeah, I was wondering if you were gonna do the JBL thing. So I was with Kitty Chaos. I was meaning to check back on it, but I was honestly busy. I was just honestly busy. Wait, what's that? Oh, okay. What the hell? What in the lock and key is this? Maybe when Smite 2 comes out, I do a JBL night. God damn it. He summons an NPC, but it can be a real player as well. Really? Is that a spoiler? I wonder. So this is an old game, right? I can't imagine there being that many people playing this goddamn game now. But I did have a player come at me in like the rat den down the hall. and I was just like, there's no way. There's no way. Hang on, I forgot which way you is. Like, people are just sitting there waiting. Why do I keep forgetting which way it is? Is it this way or the other way? Oh, it's down, okay. I wonder what I need to do in preparation for, Elden Ring. Yeah, I'm sure there are still people actually playing this game, because I did come across a person, like, that would sit there waiting for new players to kill them, and I'm like, how is this satisfying? And like, I think I have beat all the necessary bosses for Elden Ring. For the Elden Ring DLC, that is. Now I just hope I have a save file and it didn't like delete it or something. I should check that. Oh, I thought it was a second swipe. Oh, that was bad. Alright, so now... So how do we just wait for them to come out? Okay, because it hit me the first time around. No! Today doesn't feel like Friday. I keep feeling like it's a Saturday too, yeah. Saturday, Saturday. Gotta get down on Saturday. I sound jolly. Is that sarcastic? I reckon something that our generation's gonna be doing when we're older, we're gonna be singing that Friday song and people are gonna be like, I don't understand. Oh, what the hell? People at the beach on Good Friday. Oh, damn. Keep hitting the mirror. He is slow. I just gotta... I don't know. This game is slower paced though. If we're comparing this to Elden Ring, like, this game is so slow. In comparison. Oh, fire out. Oh, I didn't dodge. Oh, was Dark Souls 3 like Flaylon? Elden Ring, not Elden Ring? It is fair. No, shoot, that has like, okay, range. Somehow, once there's like a little NPC on the map, I'm screwed. I haven't been able to get past that point. I can dodge magic. Yeah, I didn't notice it. I was too slow. See, when the enemy is slow, but I'm slower. Lock-on screws you sometimes. I don't feel like it was a lock-on that was screwing me, though. Don't hit me. Ow. Come back around here. It's too fast. Oh, man. I think what happens is that I get hit, right? And then I need a heal. And then he brings out his fancy little mirror. Oh no, he brought it out anyways. Dang it. His Mirror of Ericid. Dodged the wrong way. Excuse me. Okay, I didn't dodge that either. Ow. What is he doing? And his silly shield stopped doing its job. There we go. Wait, enemies are coming. Enemies are coming! Okay, they've stopped coming. What do you mean to the best place in the game? Oh no. The best place in the game is gonna be my least favorite, isn't it? Hello, the dark. Do you like the dark games? It's just the place where I quit. Did I get all the chests? Like up the elevator? Yeah. It is Shrine of Amana, isn't it? Alright, everybody. This is the area. It was actually after this area, that's when I finally quit. But it was because of this area that I quit. Continue at the same time. Yeah. Let's go level up. I think this time I'm a little bit more, I do more damage. We just gotta run through it. I don't know. Look, Iron Keep was pretty bad. I wanted to keep that. I wanted to quit that one. I wanted to quit last stream. What should I level up? Oh, I only have enough for one. Oh, I can use something. Yeah, mind you, I do remember in Shrine of Amana, I was trying to run. I wasn't trying to kill everything. I was trying to run, and it wouldn't let me. You best believe. I'll pop some souls. Oh, we also got that boss soul, I guess. I suppose. I can't remember if I did the boss in that area. I need more endurance, guys. I'm putting a point in endurance. Alright, I don't know what else to spend my stuff on. Oh, what? So, thanks for resubbing.
Danny stole my credit card and won't let me cancel my subscription frown.
I know that. And I should probably let you know this, even though this is more of a detriment to me. But, Twitch has, oh, said the word, has raised the sub prices. So, keep in mind. As of yesterday, I think it was as of the 28th. Yeah, it's $9 a month now. Mm-hmm. Kinda lame. Amazon isn't making money anymore. They make me laugh. I wonder if buying stuff from her will level her up.
Visit me again, whenever you please.
One of the few times you personally killed more than necessary is at a second bonfire of Shrine of Amana. Wait, is this the one where there was like a bunch of mushrooms around it? Hey, Aris. I wish I had a clip or something. So, the place where I quit this game, there was a bonfire. Like, I finally got to this bonfire after all these mages, right? Dealing with these mages. And then you get to the bonfire, and there's these, like, mushrooms that are right on top of it. And it's blocking the way to the next area. And I had a big old rant. I was like, this game is literally the worst game in the world. Like, what is with the positioning of this? That's something on the side of the store. Nothing. Mages. Bloody expensive. What, this rock? Hurrah for Boulder. They break your stuff, do they? Yeah. The yellow stuff. We hate the yellow stuff. I want you to experience this with fresh eyes. No, no. In Soft's version, you killed more than in vanilla Dark Souls 2. Oh, why is that? So the first time I played this, it was the original. Unbelievable. Can you believe this? The light from my eyes are already draining. You do not see it. Need it happening. I bet that's a mimic. I just bet it is. Yeah, I think it is. We do not open these ones. I don't know, I can't be bothered. Oh, is it not? It is not. Okay, it is not. It is a real one. Oh, oh my god. What the hell? You throw a Lloyd's talisman at them? Interesting. I don't know what that is. The fake one have locks? Really? Okay. I thought there wasn't a- I don't think- no, someone looked it up and there's no real way to differentiate. Hi. I started to be able to do lives, because I joined a agency. Oh, okay. I don't remember it being this sparkly. No, this is kind of my second, but I didn't finish the first playthrough! What the hell are these? Oh. Ow. I don't think I'm gonna live. I remember these areas all too well. Am I fighting ghosts? I might as well be! Oh, there's a person in here. Person? Okay, people are too rude. This might be the worst area in the game. I'm glad I'm justified in quitting in this area.
We are Milfanito. We are here to sing to those bound by death.
It's not just me.
We will sing here forever. As we all
Oh, these are the people that sing.
long,
That's right.
long ago.
So this is my second time playing up to here, pretty much. And then after this I quit.
Should we? For we will.
So I don't know what's in this game after this area.
Do you see?
So we're soon gonna have fresh eyes. Soon it's gonna be like, I don't know what's going on.
We know nothing of the world outside. For we will never leave here.
We need to push our way through it, guys. Oh, I gotta stop sitting on the side because it's starting to hurt my back.
When we sing, the little
Yes, we. I need someone to hold my hand.
ones grant comfort to those who bear death and dark.
Come on, all together now.
This is what we were taught.
Okay, you're just repeating stuff. I don't even know what she's saying. We taught to sing. Cool, cool, cool. Oh, there's a thing here. It's annoying because it's right next to this door. Another chest. This bit is this bit. Coming back with increased reflexes and Mountain Dew like gamer son. It's gonna be easy. I do think in my head I'm like, surely I'm better at games than before, right? Surely. Hello, Nightwing. How are you? Now, did everyone have a public holiday today? No Tekken today? No. Sorry. Oh, something dramatic happened. Oh gosh. Hang on, what's going on? Oh right, the mushrooms. I can't heal. Yeah, I could have gotten them before. Tekken is stressful. I was playing it before stream actually. Practicing a bit. I demoted back to Garyu again, but that's fine. Take them one at a time. Yeah, I'm gonna try taking them one at a time this time around. Just to see. Except this area here is kind of annoying. So these are all bugs, so it's best in doing these first. Twinkling Titanite. Well, shame my weapon is at max level now. So that's no longer exciting. Yeah, I don't know what other weapon to get though. Considering I've gotten rid of all my souls. Maybe it's not necessary. Hello, buddy. Oh, stamina. A beautiful thing that we call stamina. Oh. They weren't done. Good to see more people playing the best Souls. I'm so sorry that you have that opinion, but it's just objectively wrong. Oh no. The worst one? Yeah, it's better the worse it gets. Yes. What's over there? I vaguely remember going there. Maybe I didn't. Did we just ignore that? Not everyone can recognize his greatness, thanks. I'm just everyone. Oh, there's another chest there too. A dragon charm. Dark Souls 2 is still your favorite in the series? That's just so weird. Many people are weird. I think 3 is my favorite, and I'm not even sure if it really is. But I think it was the one that I felt was the most doable. 1 was alright. Is that just for a chest? I can't be bothered. I just assume they're for mages. Okay, let's through here. Oh yes. This is it. This is it. So pretty, but so dangerous all at once. Want me to go back? I've never played a Souls game with a sorcery build. Go back and play with a sorcery build. Do you think I would enjoy it more? Oh wait, I need a...
Bearer of the curse, I will always be at your side. Until
After getting the platinum to all of them except Sakura, DS2 was definitely a favorite with the power stance, dark, ultra, great swords, and dark magic. Okay. I see. I haven't platinum any of them. I don't think that comes as a surprise. Most games I play until... that was a lot. Until I've just hit the credits, you know?
until
I can only level up once. You're joking. How are we running out? Yeah, I'm definitely not addicted to platinum thingo or like achievements or anything like that. If you know how to use sorcery in Dark Souls 2, this game gets easier. I've never used one once. Like, I'm just not a... I don't like mage stuff.
bearer until
I just think I'm boring. You know, I could be wrong. I don't know if I've ever tried. I think I just like the sword because it feels like the most honest way to play. This is for me, I'm not saying for everyone else. Spyro Reignited Trilogy. I completed everything in each game it took before moving on to the next. It took me years to finish because you kept getting angry. It's one way to not enjoy a game, hey? Hey, Lenny. I mean, I guess if you're like good at the game and you know how to make a really good build. I suppose, why not? So... Oh yeah, I was calling you dishonest. No, it's just like how I like to play it. I like to play it with a stick. I remember people telling me, there was someone that told me off for playing Neo, right? I played Neo without... Oh, there's a big thing there. Without magic? I rarely used magic, I just wasn't into it. And this person really went off at me for not using it. They're like, oh, the game would be so much easier if you did. It was just like, I just don't want to. That's really all it is. This is the part. All these mages are really insane. Oh wait, you can't walk that way. Oh my god. Do they not stop? Do they just keep on going? Do they just keep on going? Do they ever stop? Oh. I gotten close to 100%ing Borderlands 2. See, notice close. Close at 100%ing Borderlands 2 and probably the first Horizon I'm close to doing. I think that might be it. You can run around the building, give you a chance to heal and kill the followers. Oh, okay. Around the building. So not like, don't open it. Strength build is more easier. I think... Okay, in, like, to me, mage feels like effort. But probably easier, right? In terms of you'll be more powerful, potentially, than if you were using a sword. But to me it feels like effort, so I don't like it. So it's like, I guess if you're willing in to put in the effort to do magic, I guess there is that reward there. I feel like it makes sense. You just described learning a thing. I did. Oh, I didn't want to open the door. No. Why did I bother opening that? That foggy door. In DS2 it's more dex builds. I did a strength build. I do strength because it's easy. I'll be honest though, if I'm watching someone playing a Souls-like game and they're playing magic, it hits my brain a bit different. Often it's like, oh, is that all it's This game could be so much easier. It's easy to combo dark magic. I assume if you're doing magic, you need to be carrying something else. Do I bother killing any of this stuff, or do I just keep running and eventually... Thanks, Lenny. We like Souls games here. And Tekken and art, but you know. What's life without a bit of variety? Okay. This is not working out. I don't know what to do, man. If I can get around that building. If. I haven't even yet, like, even... Ugh. You zigged when you should have zagged. Thanks. I think it's just they just know where I am now. At all times. Can you stop? I accidentally tried too. I was trying to get my stuff. I don't even know what for. No, I wish animations did give you immortality. Enter the Gungeon Knight. Is that a really fast-paced game? I don't know, I walked that way, hey. You're playing the S2 as well. I am so sorry. I am also trapped in this hell. Uh, that would take forever to farm them, the dark. That would be like, what, isn't it 13 times? I know what you mean. Done that before too. Do we want to be here for 3 hours watching me kill mages? I mean, we can try. I think the first time round I did kill a couple. Let's kill these ones at the start. I don't think we need to farm souls though. We just need to get through it. You can roll. Yeah, I'm sure I can roll forward. What about these stinky things? It's the only Souls game you haven't beaten? Oh my god, we're the same person. Same. It's the only Souls game I haven't beaten as well. And you know what? I've played it before and I quit. But it's still there. The only one I haven't beaten. I don't know why I'm using that one. Alright. Right, I can dodge forward, sorry. I will heal up, don't you worry. No, keep walking. You haven't beaten Bloodborne or Demon Souls? Oh, yeah, because they are PlayStation exclusives. Yeah, I have a PlayStation. I did play Demon Souls, the remake. It was alright. That's probably my least favorite out of the whole lot, to be honest. But it was alright. We need another Dark Souls remaster? Oh, we do not. Bloodborne was good. I want to go through that again. Bloodborne was the first one I played. So, I think going through it now... I'm gonna have to fight a couple of monk guys? What do you mean? Yeah, going through Bloodborne now, I feel like I might have a different experience. Oh, there's something in this room. Yeah, so Demon Souls, it was like I hated the runbacks, right, to the bosses. They were ridiculous. It was okay. It just felt a bit watered down. And that game, it did have like, they didn't have one area. Oh, is this a monk guy? Careful where the floor ends too. Oh, but how do you know? And then also... Yeah, this is the part where I really freaking hated the game, this bit here. Do I have to go this way? Oh my gosh. Oh, thanks for Bruce. Oh my gosh. No. That is the bit. That is the bit. That's when I wanted to die. Apparently Demon Souls, the remake, they really changed up the way a lot of things look, like a lot of the art decisions from the original. So that was a shame. I know you said watch out where the floor ends, yeah. Take him back to a place that's favorable to fight. Oh, okay. I don't know what bit's favorable. I haven't learned that area very much yet. Oh. I guess we'll get there eventually. I always fidget with my hair pronto. Pronto, the name doesn't even sound right. I always fidget with my hair anyways. You can't give me a hydrate when I'm fighting mages, man. Ow. Oh. Sometimes I fidget with my hair because the hair is like touching my face and it's irritating. How was the Baileys? Oh yeah, I made the dessert. I fear that I don't have enough dessert for Easter. I mean, it's not like I have to fill up or like give him a ton of dessert. It was just so I don't go empty. But I just feel like I don't have that much. Look at the floor where the enemy was. There was a secret. Wait, which one? There was a secret at your feet. It's one of these guys. No, I had a dessert planned that I was meant to get Bailey's for, and I forgot to buy it. The purple website. Ow. God damn it. I've got to buy the key ingredient for the dessert that I was gonna make. So that's why I had to order on Uber. Show your gameplay? Oh! Hang on, what am I using? So I have a PC. And this game is on the PC. So yeah, that's how I'm doing it. If you have a console, I would look at a capture card. Elgato is the most popular brand, but there are some other brands as well that could do a better job. Potentially. Oh my god, Jim Jam. I haven't seen you in so long. Hello, how you been? PCM cooked. Well, I'm trying to think, because like, I don't know what to do. If you just have a console, you would have to be using, like, if you have a PlayStation, for example, I think you can stream directly from there, but I don't think you can stream to the clock app. You know what I've seen on TikTok streaming-wise? I've seen people, like, they'll set up their little phone or something and just record their TV. It's interesting. But yeah, I feel like you need a computer. It's gonna be the best way to do it. But that is expensive, yeah. I don't know how else you'd do it. Because you would need a computer that's powerful enough to do it. Like, I wouldn't just get, like, your, I don't know, $1,000 thing. The cheapest way to for a computer is to custom build it with the parts that you need. Like, only the parts that you need that will do the job. But yeah. Alright, no worries! Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel like you can stream directly from the PS5. But I don't think you can stream directly to TikTok. Is what the person is asking. Which is why they're like... I'm like, oh wait, like if you're just trying to stream to TikTok, I don't think you can stream directly from the PS5. Yeah, yeah. That might be a bit harder. Because I think Twitch has it built in, or the PlayStation already has it built in. And it is limited. I have definitely seen people, like, their whole thing with streaming. Like, they started their streaming on the PlayStation. And it will be janky, and it has, like, I don't know if it's still like this, but when you stream on the PlayStation, it gives you, you can connect a camera. Right, you can have a camera, and then it has, like a chat box. It looks very, very, like, I don't know, kind of ugly. It has a chat box on the stream, and then it says, like, how many people have messaged in the game. PS5 has a special camera? Really? Oh, anyways, yes. How have you been, Jim Jam? Oh no, see you later. Okay, bye. What did you play? This dungeon looks horrible? Yeah, it's horrible. This is my least favorite. I was ranging. Nah, Sora, you should go. But I hope you've been well. I have wondered where you've been. Nuzlocke doing YouTube while work was busy. Your partner moved from the UK, so not streaming so you can spend more time with her. That's fair, that's fair. Yeah, no, that's understandable. Not Twitch as much. You're doing life instead. That's probably more worth it. I don't know. So this person said there's a seeker around here. Was it around here? Wouldn't you be able to see anything? Oh, thank you! Yeah. We're engaged now. Hi. How exciting. Three 3DS capture card. That'll be fun. 3DS? I have it. I think I have. Oh, I don't know. I have an old Elgato card that can capture, like, PlayStation. Because it has the dongle for it. And I did wonder if it could do, like 3DS and stuff. The only thing with that system, the old one, is that it has, I think it's like 1 or 2 second delay. So if you're streaming from it, your gameplay will be slower on stream than what you're saying. So it's a bit weird. And you can try syncing them up, but that doesn't always work. Do you need a mod DS? I don't know. So maybe it doesn't work. And maybe it only works with console. Because I remember I was streaming the original Kingdom Hearts with it. It's probably easier to emulate 3DS. Yeah, it probably is. No. Oh, I hate this game. Oh, you're playing the finals? You seriously dislike the grenade not switching to gun in this game? Yeah, I agree. The amount of times I would bring out, like when playing the finals, I would bring out a different item, one of your other abilities or whatever, and then I'm like, oh no, I need to shoot. And you can't just quickly go shoot. You have to bring it up. And I feel like you always lose that trade-off. I'm gonna be in this area for forever. I don't know how we're gonna do this. You can get handhelds that emulate most consoles for like $60. I think the problem is it's a grey area in terms of legality with emulators. Because I feel like technically a lot of them is illegal, especially if you don't have the original game. And if you're streaming stuff publicly, like gameplay from games that you actually don't have, it's illegal. That's where you have an issue. I don't know, I think they, I don't know. I don't know if they just don't care. Like, that's a good question, because I actually don't know how all the streamers do in the retro section, because there has to be. Selling ROMs on those devices are illegal. Yeah. Also, you can stream, play games you don't own, you just have to say you own it. Oh, right. Yeah, I guess. I guess you can just say it. And then ignore the people that asked you to prove it. Downloading ROM for the internet is illegal. Emulation is legal since technically it doesn't have games. Yeah, I get what you mean. I'm just saying, like, it's like if you emulate a game that you technically don't have, then it's illegal. You're saying, I don't know. Far out. I give up. I never looked into it. I don't actually know. I just know it's a grey area. There's a legal grey area. And then if you're gonna look into doing retro games, like streaming retro games, you should probably read up on that grey area. This area sucks. It's only really illegal if you're distributing the ROM. I see. You're allowed to make backups of any digital media you own. I just don't know, like, I can't, I'm getting stuck at that house somehow. Maybe I just run to the side. And then, yeah, like, if you've made a backup, say, of a game that you've had, right, and it got destroyed, I don't know, there was a fire and your original version got destroyed. It's either farming or rage quitting. Okay. I guess we're farming. The thing is, I haven't really been farming, have I? I haven't been getting my souls back. I should pick them up. Might as well do some whilst we're here. I feel like I need almost 20k souls to level up at this point. I don't even think it's a frog. Oh, Oh my goodness me. Unless I picked up the stuff. Back at it again, I guess. We're gonna be hitting like 500 tonight, I reckon. The count's gonna be at 500. It's this one here. It keeps stuffing me up. Oh, there's two of them. Finally, we're moving on. Thanks, Stenny. Oh wait, we're gonna get hit by the back. Shrine of Vamana. Vamana. Staff of Vamana. Alright, deal with this thing first. Your character kinda stays still. Annoyingly? Yeah, Vamana. Wait, is that Yada's favorite card? I don't know. Alright, where's it safe for me to fire these guys? Ow, these monks kinda do suck. Is Vamana your favorite god, Yada? I'm at the Shrine of Amana. Or Vamana. Whatever you want to call it. Do these guys on the left fight you? Okay, I was wondering if this is where I felt like I had too many people on me. No. Why don't I have a range? This guy didn't chase me for some reason. No, there's two of them. There's also... Wait, there's another one down here! Oh my god. Why is that one all the way over there hitting me, but not the one here? What's with this person? Just go frog door. Okay. Still here. This bit. Let me tell you, this is where I have my big major rant and quit the game for good. Like, what is this? Let's hear the rant. This is you stupid. What is the point of this? I fought this until they stopped spawning. So what is it, 13 times? That was one. Does that thing stop? Like, once? Oh my god, that thing scared the hell out of me. By the way, this rant was like, was it 3 years ago? 4 years ago? I don't know. Parasect? Yeah, it looks like it, hey. True. Well, they're gonna be chopping for a while. I don't want them to respawn ever again. No, 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 we're gonna be here for a while. Enjoy. Well, because we're gonna come back here anyway. So this stuff ruins your outfits, right? If you're in it long enough. Streamer actually trolling. Yes. It's me. Hi. I'm trolling. I might as well farm away. I'm the troll, it's me. What do you mean, please stop pretending? Am I pretending? Do you guys not think this is real? Are we in a simulation? Pretend what? I'm coming back to where I quit the game. This is it. Guys, you have no idea how much I hate AI generation. You know what? I uploaded a video to YouTube, and now it has a little thing in there asking if the content has been altered. Like, if it's been AI modified or something. And I thought that was really interesting. I think it's like modified with AI? I don't know. That's a really weird question. Yeah, I think I took a photo. Take a photo of everything that interests me. Okay, so altered content. Do any of the following describe your content? Makes a real person appear to say or do something they didn't say or do. Alters footage of a real event or place. Generates a realistic looking scene that didn't actually occur. And then it has, to follow YouTube's policy, you're required to tell us if your content is altered or synthetic. I cut off something there. Realistic sounds or visuals made with AI or other tools. Selecting yes labels them as AI. Oh yeah, I see what you mean, Andrew. I don't think that's what they're saying. Can I read a riddle? No. Yeah. I do wonder, like, how it comes up. Like, if a video was made with AI or something. Oh, at risk. Are they no longer at risk? It is really easy to hit no, I know. But that's the thing, it's really easy to lie about anything, just in general. But that's what's been frustrating me about the internet lately, is that there is no rules regarding this stuff. And that if you were to, I mean, Google was bad before this anyways when it comes to image search. And I've noticed this in the past few years anyways. But lately, when you Google something, half the stuff is just AI generated stuff. It's really, like, it's useless going through Google Images now. It's just, it sucks. And as someone who uses, like, I use image search to get reference images for art, it's frustrating. Like, what am I meant to do? Alright, when do these stop? How many have we done? Surely we're almost up to 10. At least we got some levels out of it. Corrosive and life gem, thank you. Oh, that was it, I think. It's funny to you that you're upset you can't scrape the internet's image references of your art because AI has already done it. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, if I want to look at pictures of dogs, alright? Look at pictures of dogs, I want to draw a dog. And I cannot be referencing an AI dog because they do really weird things to their bodies. It's not accurate.
There until
We'll level up one as well, I guess. I'm researching AI dogs, not on purpose. If you look up any animal, you're just gonna get AI animals. Go look up a rabbit. I bet you're gonna see so many fake ones. They're so ugly. It's crazy. How much is this? 3,000. Is that enough?
there until
And they always have, like, their eyes, a good way to tell, their eyes are never, they don't look right. Maybe I'm just looking at too many AI things. What do you mean?
Bearer of the curse, I will always be at your side.
Should I be using the National Geographic? No, if I was to Google bunny rabbits, I would come up against a lot of AI bunny rabbits. In my, like, image search. You see none. Are you sure?
Bearer of until
100%, because, like, are you sure? Sure. Because I'm getting real good now. I just think you guys, I don't know, I don't believe you guys. I feel like I'm gonna have to Google to... Hang on, let's prove a point. Alright, what are we Googling? Oh, you have an ad, okay. Right. You guys are trolling me! Look, there's an AI right here! Instantly! You cannot tell me that you are not! You cannot! All I have to search is bunny rabbit, and instantly, like, in the top 20. I am not making stuff up! Alright, let me look up. I'm gonna try incognito, yeah. And then I'm gonna show you guys incognito. Alright. How do I show this to you guys? Here's some bunny rabbits. This one showed up. Does that look like a real bunny to you? Does this look like a real bunny to you? This is not a real bunny. These ones. These are all, like, what is this? What is this? And this is stuff that I kept getting. I kept getting, like this! This isn't real! Oh, you can't see that because I'm covering it. Not real! If I look up frogs... It's funny, I think this is actually a real picture. Is it? Is it? No, that one definitely isn't. I think this one might be AI. Oh, no, it's not. But if you start, like, looking up things that are real specific for animals, I got the same results in incognito. But usually when I'm looking for images for references, I am looking through most images. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But it's a problem. When I'm like, oh, they're supposed... Oh, that's not what I want. Yeah. I just wish there was a way to report it as, like, I don't want to see this. Maybe you can report this result. I'll just report them all. You know what has been annoying me as well is clear location browsing history. Yeah, maybe. You know what doesn't help with that? A lot of the times it will be sorry, Adobe. It will be Adobe stock because I use Adobe stock for work. And then you can untick like AI generated stuff. But people still post their stock images and like unmark them as AI generated images and you still get them. It's really annoying. Dude, I'm so fed up. I'm so fed up with seeing it everywhere. I'm so fed up with seeing like my family posting all these AI images. Like it's I don't know. I'm like what? It's just so ugly. Not like stuff they were posting were good before anyway, but it's just like it just looks Oh, so the shrines that are like hidden like this are the ones that have been revealed, right? I feel like it'll always be an issue. And it's just like, the thing is, it's just gonna get worse. You're gonna get articles full of, oh my god, have I even been in here? What is this? That is terrible. I don't know how you can handle it, Oris. I want the internet to start all over. I want it to go back to like the 2000s. What is this? Why does this area suck so much? I think it's a crazy thought. Let's just delete the internet. Redo. Start fresh. Let's get rid of all this, like, this internet culture we've built up. We don't like it. We don't like it here. Let's start all over again, please. Thank you. Oh, I just don't know what you're meant to do. Why am I so slow? Oh my gosh, this mage still seeing me. Oh yeah, I also had the same. I had like so many words that were just emotes on MSN. It was a mess. But it was a simpler time, was it not? Like, I had time to just sit there and sift through my emotes. My emojis. Dude, why? Why is Peculiar ruining my life? Thank you. Try hidden path. Am I meant to go in here? I think, Wildfire said hug left. Oh. Oh. She disappeared! I think, is this the, I think this might be the boss. Let's take it back. Yeah, let's take it back to 2001. I wasn't on the internet in 2001. Oh. This is fresh eyes. What is this? What the hell is this? Oris? Is Oris here? This is what your AI frogs are gonna start looking like. Thanks, JD. This is not a frog. You know what I want? I want a tool, right, for these search engines to have where it scrapes images and sees if it's like AI designed or not. And then for people like me, you can get rid of them. Is explore a new tab? I don't know. Why am I not hitting it? Do I have to hit the thing inside? It's not... Okay, so, like, I'm saying I hate AI. It's not necessarily AI that I hate. Right? There is useful tools to it. It's what is happening. It is the misinformation, the garbage images, the danger that it poses. That is the problem. Took me a while to realize that the boss is the face. Yep. Is my clock live still working for you, DJ? Slap face pal. I am. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm out of health. Who knew? I used a bunch of those, I think. Oh, damn it, I just used a bunch of those. Okay, I used a bunch of my healing things before coming in here. They did have a jihad against AI after all, I would. Oh yeah, no, that's fine, DJ, I don't mind. We've had a lot of people come in, for Souls. You hate that boss? It's the first time I'm seeing it. So by the way, I played this game before, but I quit here. And now I'm like, oh, something new! I don't know how hard it is to run there. This run back seems a bit rough. Ah! Oh, good lord. Okay. Yeah, no, this feels refreshing to me. I haven't... Refreshing is the right way to put it. It's still frustrating. As frustrating as it was. Yeah, no, I think that's intentional. That wasn't you randomly falling to the floor. It's that you can't see it. See the floor. It's like Blight Town. I don't feel like it's Blight Town because it's not poison, but it is frustrating all the same. Oh right, I don't even have anything there. Why did I bother picking it up? Alright, so it's in here. You messaged the server saying you hated DS2 when you were doing this. Yes. Oh, I haven't played Dark Souls in so long. I do not remember the pain that was Blighttown. I feel like for a lot of people's experience though, Blighttown was a problem because it was unoptimized. Which is funny. No. Ow. You know, I thought I'd had 400 by now. At least that. At least we're still kicking. What are these items? You reckon? No. The game is not gonna let me get it. Guess I'm just gonna go through life without ever picking up items. I haven't picked up a new Estus Flask in ages. Too many virgin spellcasters blocking the way. Okay, what do you have against virgins? Huh? Okay, that's a way to go. Queen Run. I think this might be a boss fight where you don't want to lock on, so let's not do that. How long ago did you add your emotes how long ago did you upload them? He just wants a hug? Oh, I believe him. Last night? Oh, okay. It might take, like a week or two. Yeah, well hopefully. Well, because you gotta think it's also Easter, so people will be on holidays, and they also have reduced staff. So you might have to wait, until like Tuesday or Wednesday, hopefully. Kinda dumb I can't fight him here. Oh, we got him. It really was just my camera. The lock-on thing was being a problem. Yeah, we did, Trace. Look at us go. Alright. That one's done, I guess. I think some affiliates can get instant upload, but I think it's like what DJ said. I think that's more of a new thing. You did it. Nice job. Yeah. Be wary of liar. Is there a bonfire here, or... There is a butterfly. Any bonfire? Oh, my mom's calling me. I like how I knew it was my mom. 1 second. Hello? I need to go do something. It won't take long. Where is there a bonfire? My mum went somewhere and she forgot her medication. No, I'm being serious. Is there a bonfire here? In past the tomb? Oh, far out. I really have to wait here, don't I? Okay. RB. You can't pause this game. I'll just wait here. Alright. RB. I won't take long. Alright, sorry. I won't take long. I'll be like 5 minutes tops. Put some chill music on? DMCA. Play an ad. Have an ad. Well, I don't actually know how to play an ad. I'm not even kidding. I've lost my ad tab, sorry. Enjoy! Don't play an ad! For some reason I locked the phone. 1 second. 1 second. Do we still have a wildfire here? I have a not Dark Souls related question. Does anyone know if you were to go to the pharmacist and you have, say, a prescription, but you haven't got the original prescription on you, would you be able to take a copy of that prescription? Hello. So you're a pharmacist. Would you be able to accept a copy of a prescription at the pharmacy? Yeah, I understand not Taylor, but this is in a situation you don't have your medication and you don't have the original prescription with you. But I have it. This isn't for me, by the way. My mum, like, she doesn't have access to her medication and she's too far away. She's too far away, TJ. Like, she's too far away is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's why I asked. Because, like, I could scan it and send it to her. And she could try to print it. But it's not her regular pharmacy because she's too far away. She's not near her house. She's like over 5 hours from her home. Oh my gosh, she's so bad with electronics. Yeah, I don't know what they are. I think it might be her, like antidepressant meds or something. So a copy of the prescription wouldn't work. It's never straightforward though. Alright, so there's a guy at the end of this. Yeah, I just wanted to ask because I have the original ones here because she left her car here and she had them in a car. That's why I was wondering if I was able to scan them and send it and if that could pass. One of these, huh? No, I'll probably, like, I'll call her and, like, tell her that she probably needs to go to a doctor. But maybe she just needs the name of what it is to go to a doctor. That door sounded weird. Back. Oh my god, I hate everyone. Front. Right. Ah, yeah. Like, she won't have time for the mail. Okay. Try beanpole. Oh, bonfire. No, I think she just has to go to a doctor. I don't think she has an option. I think she just needs to know the name of the thing. Again? I hate these. Who does it? Yeah, it scared the hell out of me too.
What drives you so to overcome the supposed curse? Life is brilliant, beautiful. It enchants us to the point of obsession.
You just go away so I can do the bonfire. This is why I hate, like, this is why I don't play horror games. It really is just like that. Ugh.
Once the Lord of Light banished dark and all that stand from humanity. And then
I don't know. Do I have to make a decision now? God damn it, I have to make a decision now. Do I still desire peace? Yes or no? Glad it's not one of those time choices. Does this choice matter? Peace? Do I still... Do I still... You know when you see what, like, it completes the sentence? If a character isn't bored, just say yes to whatever they ask. Interesting. I am bored. Wait, I just finished a boss. Oh, but if I have to... So I guess I say yes, and then he keeps jump scaring me. I'm asking a serious question, and people are giving me a serious answer, like... It's a question only you can answer. Do you cling to the scraps of your past life, or do you abandon it and press forward with a clean slate? There's no wrong answer. I want to know which one I press. Thank you. I know. Oh, the philosophical answer. It's the type of gamer that I am. I seek the spawn file, please. Do I cling to the past? I don't think so, but that wasn't what he asked. He asked if I seek peace. How has that anything to do with the past? Everything from here on out, man. We have an experience. You don't... No, I don't enjoy going in the wrong direction for 3 hours. Thank you. I'll level up. Anyone. I need people to tell me yes or no, man. Hopeless gamer over here. It's so expensive.
Until hope.
I just know with games like the Souls-like games, sometimes they'll throw you a question like that, and it's a game-altering question. And you don't know what's happening. You press the wrong one and you've doomed your place, your save play. Will I play Dark Souls 2 after? Like after I finish? No. I'm never touching this game ever again. Should have paid attention to the lore. What lore?
Until
You didn't finish it, so you can't shame me. This is me trying to finish it once and for all. If I want lore of this game, I don't look for the game. I look for the YouTube videos. The good news is that I've past the point where I last quit. So now everything is new. The hell? Bonfire? What the hell? It's the 2 shards I've missed. You don't have to. Skeleton ahead, so stay calm. Thank you. Are they hard to get to? I wouldn't mind 1 Estus flask. Oh, one's in a mana. I see. In a corner. On the side. Hello. That was 2 of them. Okay. Are they gonna sit there? Elden Ring is easier, much bigger. It might be... It is probably a game with better balance, yeah. This game has been frustrating the whole way through. Oh, they really don't chase you. They defend. Okay, we're doing well. Yeah, there's 2 there. Right. I hate this game. It's even scarier doing this game without knowing what's next. Alright. Thanks, I'm glad. Thank you for the congratulations. I know. Congrats on making it this far. I know. It's amazing. Can't believe we're doing it. Poisoned? By what? Oh, there's fire everywhere? Actually, I don't know what I got poisoned by. Yeah, let's just walk past those guys. Maybe. Alright, I was meant to call my mom. She texted me during that time. Roll back and take them one by one. Or you just run through them all. Okay. Well, she said she was still gonna try the pharmacy. The little hand flip thing. Yeah, I still do hand gestures when I'm on the phone. Like anyone can see. Alright, let's go. This guy not getting out. Oh, hello. Oh, great shield. I don't think it's over-the-counter medication, DJ. Like, I don't think there's an alternative for it. Yep. I think running is a better option.
Halt.
Ah, halt!
Human, do not produce light.
Who's speaking?
Light, and all those who bear it.
But there was someone with like a torch. Do not produce light. Who spoke to me? Someone in the wall? Try torch. Now, do I try torch? Liar ahead. Well, I don't know. What do I do? I hate this game. Friend ahead. Are you sure? It says light isn't welcome. I'm almost inclined to believe them. Be wary of message, liar ahead. Ally ahead, in short, be wary of torch. These people are so contradictory. Oh, they effed you up, did they? Okay, no torch. Oh. Thank you, mirror images. Who are the gifted sons? Thank you. Try jumping. No! You're playing a game on your phone and it just referred to a pear as a stretched apple. Well, you never know. You can buy pear apples at the groceries. And that's what I saw the other day and I thought it was real weird. Wait, you didn't talk to the dude? Which dude? Up here? Wait, is there someone to talk to up here? Oh. This is the guy.
I am Ugdane, guardian of the crypt. Countless dead rest here in peace, cradled by the comfort of dark.
It's very blue.
Light only agitates. We have no need for it here. I am a finito.
Light only agitates, I agree.
Watch over the dead. This task
I never turn on the lights.
The one who gave us the first death. Countless souls rest here. Some of them from ages long ago. Some were rich, others poor. Some wise, some dull, but now they're all just dead. Did you come for him? The one
Did I come for Vendrick?
Vendrick.
I think so.
You will find him deeper inside. Many council servants and the like have come to fetch their lord. But they rest here now, put to death by the king's own guards. Perhaps he's not in the mood for company.
Something tells me he's not ever in the mood for company.
In the past, humans were one with the dark. The former king of light, he feared humans. Feared that they would usher in an age of dark.
Well, you can hybridize pears and apples and not the same fruit. Yeah, I wondered what a pear apple is.
Never separating truth from fiction.
And I didn't buy any.
This place is welcome to all. Death is equitable, accepting. We will all one day be welcomed by her embrace.
I think it was pear apple.
Desire. Show me reverence, and I will lend you my hand. Crude human.
Why are they always so rude? One gesture.
Crude human. Do as you please.
Yeah, I don't know what's a good apple. I personally am a bit of a... I don't like apples that much. I like apples when they're cut up. I think it's more of the method of eating them. What is that? So I'm not meant to like this. Okay. Fossil bonfire. Bonfire near here. Try left and then bonfire ahead. Who tells the truth? This game's terrifying. Actually, how do you walk through here? Is this a maze? Oh no. Okay, remember how we talk about how lame this game is? Oh wait, you can break them. Probably breaks your weapon too. Oh no, I rained the dirt. Oh my gosh. It's still ringing. I still need teleported. You'd rather eat an orange over an apple. I think oranges are tastier, but I don't know, they kind of hurt to eat sometimes. Oh, I see. I put it here so you have to ring the bell. Alright, So what's the way to go? Is that the way I came through? Up there? Oh no. The skeletons can ring it. That's so annoying! Ah. This area sucks! What the hell? If you hit the statues and break them? Oh, not the bells, the statues, right? Okay, let's do that. Alright, we can do that. Oh, I won't stop ringing. Killable one at a time. Alright. Let's do it one at a time. Oh, that's the bell. I accidentally rang. Ooh, I know. Alright, any more statues? There's one here. Oh, it keeps spawning them. Oh, damn it. Oh, this game's so frustrating. What do you mean there's more? Hello. Ah. God damn it. A sad face when reading that. Well, it's not exactly an enjoyable area, is it? Does this look like fun? It could be 100 more. Okay, that sounds like an exaggeration. Oh, there's a person in the wall. Of all things. Adam Webb must have done real poorly every single ad break you've had. You've had ad breaks for Madam Webb. I don't think it did well. I don't know if that's why there's ad breaks though. The thing is, I think Adam, they're preferring you to watch Madam Web at the movies. This game sucks. Yeah, I got this one. Error is giving me a headache. Oh my lord. Oh, dark spirit, my butt. No! I have to go through there again. Now I can run without worrying about the bells. Oh dear. I thought maybe blocking would help. Oh, I still owe you guys speaking Portuguese. Tá bem. Se você mesmo quer. Ah, sai daqui! Não quero. Isto é difícil. Ah. Okay. Vanquished. Não gostas. Tem ela a falar em terceira pessoa em português? Não sei. Não gosto desta área, muito longo. Vai para sempre. É, eu vejo a você. Ah, isso é muito comprido, não é? Ah, e depois tem dois desses homens. Escravo, vou voltar e usar o Souls. Se português tem genders, yeah. Tem. Como é que esse trabalho entre ser pessoa? Eu sou nojos ali. Mas eu acho que em inglês é também Unless say common conditions gendered. How do you say gendered? Oh meu Deus. Give up. So I feel like English is a gendered language, but you can still say they. Whereas Portuguese is definitely gendered. I don't know if there is. I guess not. Portuguese is definitely gendered. Because there's words that isn't like ela or el, which is like she or him, right? She or him? He? No, she and he is LOL, right? But then there are words themselves that it's like obrigada, obrigado, and that's literally thank you. Well, I don't think you would say obrigado, but you might. But like, there's everything with like everything has a gender to it. Yeah.
There until
I'm not the best person to ask. Yeah, and I feel like I've kind of brought it up before because I've wondered how hard it would be to try to refer to someone who's non-binary in a Portuguese language because I'm just like, how do you do that? Do you just default to the he's in the language? No, I need more than that. Like, I genuinely don't know.
there until
That gives you 50. Oh my god.
there until
Now we got 50. Yeah, but so Elge is plural. Unless that's you just use the plural term. Oh, you have to really deal with this again. Dear Lord. I don't know, you could be right. It could be just Elge. Because they is like meant to be plural as well, technically. Wait, wasn't there more? Oh, here it is. Now I have to do 2 of these at a time. Like, what the hell? I guess technically you only need to deal with 1. my goodness. Okay, but getting hit by both of them at the same time, that's painful. Oh, is there a hole? Oh, I meant to jump down the hole. Are you kidding me? Ah. Grrr! This game sucks. This game sucks. Oh, there's 2 ways to go. Which one do you do? There's 3 ways to go, actually. Oh, hey, this is the other side. Yeah. I don't know what's easier. Honestly. Is that easy? Not really. It is a shortcut. Are the other ways important? Is that where the boss is? I don't know. Is this how you do the run back? Oh wait. This is where we ran in through. And this is how we got here. Right? Oh, there's a ladder here. Did you know that? I guess I might as well explore the other 2 ways. Are there any statues in here? I haven't seen any. But there are bells. Oh, wait. I've forgotten how we got in here to begin with. So how did we jump down? Did we just jump down back down to here? Is there a hole above here? Oh my god. Hang on, I am so confused. Okay, I entered the wrong way. Okay, I see. Sorry, I've confused myself. Now I know where we are. I understand. This is the new area. Multiple of them. Tasty. When is supernova? Oh. Is Supernova a big convention or not really? I've been a few times and I've just kind of forgotten. Oh my god, Free Loop hasn't been playing Dark Souls. Disappointed, honestly. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think there's any more, but here is one. Fruit Loop, once you stop, you never go back. Take it from me. They are haunting bells. I am trying to find a way that doesn't require me to whack them, but I don't know if that exists. Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand. That's why I stopped this game initially. You don't need any negativity, I understand. What does this give you? A dragon charm. Lovely. Oh. There's still a thing down here, and is that it? A thing? I think it might just be a thing. Okay, well, don't worry about you then. Oh, that was it. That was that room. Oh, I almost walked too far. Oh, okay. Sometimes, have you tried using the rapier? No, I haven't. Actually. I've only tried using whatever this thing is. What is this thing again? It starts with a C. How do you go down there? A claymore, that's it. I always forget the name of it. Yeah. What the hell? You really came all that way? Try jumping off and then up. Oh, wait. It really is. Secret ahead. Now what? Do I have to jump onto that? Oh wait, there's a ladder here. Ah! Son of a... What are you meant to do about that? I'm thinking you're meant to jump onto him as well. But I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna think it's not jumpable. But it looks like you can light him up. Maybe? But I don't think you're meant to light anything up this place. I don't know. Anyways, moving on. There's nothing here, that's right. You know, that looks like a boss, so I'm gonna run back. I don't know, reset. I don't know what I'm resetting. Well, there's an NPC that said you shouldn't light things up. And you know, he could be wrong or he could be right. There is some light here though, in fairness. Okay. More bells, is it? Isn't that like one of the dragon riders? Alright, what is this? Is this the king? I don't think so. He doesn't really look like a king. No, it's not. Alright. Okay, try, I guess. I guess. Hmm. This is not a long run back, but is a long run back at the same time. Look at this length of this corridor. Yeah, damn. Oh, there's chests in here. No, no. What's this? It's a healing. Oh, I don't know what this means. He's done something. He now does dark magic or something. Ooh. Can you calm down with your bells? Oh. How many bells in this area? Nope, didn't have to hit that one, my bad. Oh my goodness. I thought I rolled. You know what? Any souls I had, they're gone. This game has me so exhausted. I'm back at it again. Yeah, at least a decent run back. I still feel like there is so much to this game. Oh. God damn it. You covered this area pretty well. How many more areas are there? I'm just glad I got past Shrine of Amana. I don't even know... I know, thinking back to the point that I quit, I think I quit because I was so over the BS of it all. And that's the real reason. Whereas, like, Iron Keep, that was a I wanted to quit moment. Like, I was so done. I'm surprised I didn't give up an Iron Keep, but I reckon I played Iron Keep and then had Shrine of Amana, and that was the final nail in the coffin. Oh. Okay. Keep getting this timing wrong and I have to run all the way back. I think I have the ads. Remember how I had it running once per hour? And it was like a 3-minute slot. I now have it as twice per hour. Because I think I had too many people complaining about large ad slots. all these streaming companies are going to keep complaining why they're losing subscribers, and it's because everyone is, like, they're cancelling their subs because of all the prices rising. Ah, God damn it. Oh, I know it's not a complaint about me, but it's like... Oh, that was the first time round the best one. God damn it. I know it's not a complaint about me, and it's definitely because of Twitch, but they were getting those big ad slots because I set them up like that. Because I'm like, oh, like I have it like that, so I have 1 hour of no ads, and then it's 3 minutes of ads. But oh, I don't have them so I can get paid. I have them because I need to. There is no option to turn them off, Ando. There's no option to turn them off. It's forced on you. Yeah, Twitch has ads. Do you not get Twitch ads? This isn't like so I get paid situation. It's either you get pre-rolls or you like change the timing of them to have 3 minutes per hour. Oh, I see. Yeah, the only way to not have ads on your stream is to not be an affiliate or a partner. Imagine. Okay. There are people who have done it. The people who have been like, I'm over it. Not earning enough streaming anyway. And I have to deal with all the BS. That being said, we are using their platform for free. But I guess other platforms exist too. Maybe she can do damage here. Ooh, ow. Yeah, and it's funny because they've... Oh, okay. Where do I face when that happens? I have to dodge it. They've backflipped on that whole multi-streaming thing. Because it was, honestly, it was ruining their platform. Yeah, not in front of him? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. I've muted the game for myself, my bad. Alright. Oh yeah, it was like that for years, I know. It took them ages to backflip on it. There was once where they went back on it for a bit, where it was like partial. And then they doubled down. And now they full... Oh no, I'm saying like the process of making it so that you can. The current CEO is pretty receptive to what people actually want, but God damn it. It's just... I know it's just not going to be enough, because they're clearly trying to reach a quota, and they must be so far from it, from making all these changes. Oh, they always allowed that, yeah. I upload the VODs, right? But then, like, I'll take 2 weeks to make a thumbnail. I hate thumbnails. I think it's not even that time consuming. I don't know. I just hate making them. I need to change my way of thinking. Alright, let's watch it. I dodged! Oh my gosh, the hitbox in this game. Haven't hit him once. I swear, when they added affiliates and people were thinking it was such a, like an amazing good like thing that Twitch was doing, I was like, no, no, they're gonna make so much money off this. I don't think people realize how much money they're gonna make off affiliates. You like this guy a little less than Looking Glass? Looking Glass guy was fairly easy. It's not a bad thing, but people felt like they were doing it out of their good graces. No, no. They should have had it set from the start. I think it was like maybe the process they were still ironing out, because like trying to make it more automated, because the process of partnering people was very slow initially. Like before, to partner someone, you would have to email in. And they would be going through emails individually. No, I think they were trying to streamline the process. I remember, do you guys remember Hitbox? I found the only rock that I need to get rid of. I think that one was, it was a streaming service where it gave you 100% of your sub revenue or something like that. No, Hitbox wasn't Microsoft. Microsoft one was Mixer. I can't remember what the percentage split was on that one. I totally forgot about Mixer. Oh my gosh. Remember Mixer? What a blast from the past. God damn it. Something you can negotiate. Like, everyone could negotiate? Fun fact, and I feel like I could say this now because that contract is null and void. My split when I first got a partner was 70-30. You remember this boss from a long time ago? Well, this is my first time doing them. I haven't worked out his, one of his moves yet. Yeah, so esports contracts to partner it was 70-30 by default. So my split was 70-30 for a few years. And then that got changed, I don't know when. They changed it without even telling me. Like, they made some, like, changes to partnership in general. And, like, they just brought everyone into a new system. And then that's when I suddenly started getting 50-50. Just out of nowhere. But then, like, those contracts, the esports contracts, they were null and void. They've absolved them. There's nothing you can do about it. There was some getting as high as 90-10. That's insane. It's actually crazy. How do you... No one could even dream of getting that nowadays. Okay. I don't know. I don't know how they did them. I tried to heal and then I suddenly had less health. Oh. Oh, why did I get hit? Oh, damn it. But I was doing so well! You still think if you ever got famous off a kind of media, you want it to be books so you can have a lot of anonymity? Oh, or I guess like podcasting, anything audio related, like if you're a radio host or something. Oh, I guess sometimes the famous radio hosts have faces and ads. I don't know. I reckon if you were like a TV personality today, people don't know who you are. Who the hell knows who you are? You think you can handle TS fame? No. God damn it. I just want to heal, man. If I was like everyone outside knew me famous, I would need to have the best support system one person could have. And like I would not be handling my socials or anything like that, you know. Other people do that because that kind of stuff you don't, I don't know. You don't want to put that on yourself, I don't think. Yeah. I don't know why that attack hit you. Oh my god. I really hate this Estus Flash, man. Takes way too long. Oh. I guess you take a bit less damage in this mode. I think my controller's dying. God damn it. Have you ever heard of the show The Circle? No, so there's a show, it's a Netflix show, right? And I know most Netflix reality shows are garbage. Alright, but hear me out. I personally really like The Circle. It is a great show. Like, I really like the concept. It is a great show. No, so the concept of the circle is you have, I think, like 10 people, around about 10 people, where they all go into, like, their own room in an apartment complex. This is, Scholar, the person, yeah. And then everyone gets a social media account. And then essentially, they have access to this own, like, social media that the show has come up with, and they interact with each other through the social media. And then they rate each other, rank each other, type of thing, based on their impressions on people through their interactions. And it's like, you have people who are going there as themselves, people who are going there as catfishing, like this whole thing. Show your adept. Oh, I think it's at 100. ADP is 25. AGL is 100. So I think they're coming up to the 5th or 6th season now. Yeah, I'm sure maybe just a bit more would be good. Honestly. Sometimes I'm feeling it. I've been complaining about the Estus Flask Keon. Yeah, but you know what? I like that show. I think it's not as exploitative as others. Because it's entirely a strategy game, really. Yeah, shoot. He just hurts so much. Oh, okay, and 100 is like the same as Dark Souls. I don't know. I pretty much leveled it to 100. And then I thought if I get some spare levels, I will put some more in adaptability. But then I just never did. Because I needed more stamina. But I just got strength up to 50. So I wouldn't mind putting some adaptability. What's the outcome? The outcome is you win money. Like, there's a winner to it. So people get eliminated if they're ranked too low. And then the person who gets the highest rating at the end wins the money. He's, blocking a bonfire. I'm gonna assume he's blocking the king. Ah, god damn it. The final I think has either 4 or 5 people. I think it might be 4. I keep getting close. I've gotten that close like maybe 4 times now. We just need to hold it out. Need to hold it out to the end there. I swear my controller's dying. Like, it's not walking sometimes. Unless I just ran out of stamina, I didn't realize. Could be that. But it's, it doesn't feel good. Feels janky. All the Dark Souls 2 fans are trolls, Yoxies. That's all I have to say about you. That's what I tell people. There ain't no way. Good night, DJ. I don't like this game. I really don't. I can see what you can like about it. There are some endearing qualities to it, sure. Free Ran ended last week. What are you talking about? What's Free Ran? Fire Ran? But it's like, is it the... I just don't know what people like about this game. Is it the frustration of it all? How it throws you like millions of enemies through a corridor. How it throws you a bunch of these before a boss room. And the one before that horse thing, far out that bridge, was ridiculous. I've never seen this show before, Patrick. Did you like it? I'll go down. I don't know if I can handle sad shows right now. What does more damage? Oh, far out, right. The hitbox. Insanity. Don't stand too far behind him. Ah. It was fine. Yeah, I guess. There's been a few when he hit me from the back like that. Oh. Okay. We have some enemies coming in here. Oh wait, they're from that side. Are they coming in? Oh, I think they might. What the hell is that? Despair. Pull back, but despair ahead? Is this the king? Bravery ahead. Am I meant to kill him? This Dark Souls play on Switch? I don't think so. I don't understand. Liar. There's not a throne in here or anything. Oh, he's lost it and got stuck on the thing. Is there a choice to be had here? It's the King's Ring. Wait, why is it so sparkling? Alas, nothing happened. Oh. Am I meant to kill him? Does game take much effort to play? Are you talking about, like, effort from you, or... Wait, is that a person? Effort from me? I mean, effort from me, yeah, it takes a lot of effort. There's an enemy behind you.
This ring is the symbol of the king. Use it to gain passage through the king's gate
King's Gate.
and venture to the far east. Bearer of
No, it's okay. This game is hard. Yeah. It's difficult.
one day you will walk those grounds. Without
I was wondering if you meant, like, if you needed good specs or something to play the game. Have I ever played Bloodborne? I have. It was my first Souls-like. Years ago. Alright. Do I just run back? I don't have the heart to kill him, to be honest. You can't kill him. Oh, okay. Oh, I did like Bloodborne. I was thinking about playing it again. I feel like if you want to play like a Souls game, like Dark Souls 1, or I don't know. I'm like, what one's less demanding? They can still be demanding in places. Sometimes they're not for everybody, you know? I did get his ring. Okay. You can't kill him. You need to do something special to kill him. You can hit him, but his resistance are really high right now. Did you get his ring? I did. He's not hostile. No, I got his ring. Okay, if you have his ring, you can leave. Okay. I have to walk back, don't I? They didn't give us a bonfire here. That's nice. Yeah, go back to the place with the fog. Got ya. Oh, does Homeward Bone? That one keeps your stuff, right? That's the one that keeps your stuff? I haven't used one in this game yet, apparently. I haven't had to. It doesn't say you lose your stuff. I'm gonna assume. This game is new. No, it's been out for 10 years, actually. I think it came out in 2014. When did this game come out? It's an old game. No, not checking today. I'm almost, stream's gonna end soon, too. I do have sad news. I did demote earlier this afternoon, but I felt like I was playing well, so there's something. I demoted to a Jack who was like, I think it was really good. I don't know. Yes, 10 years ago, 2014.
till hope.
Putting a few points in there. 8 hours training a day. I don't have 8 hours. No. He did, yeah, Jack, I think certain characters that you match up with, I think Lars and Jack has like a special cutscene at the start. Well, I did play maybe 1.5 hours today, which is decent for me. He does 13 hours a day. That's just insane. I get it. I don't have the time. I have other things to do, unfortunately. I don't know how someone can do 13 hours a day, though, to be fair. No, I didn't.
Bearer until those who come to Drang Lake see it happens to them. That blue knight at the base of the tower, although he does offer, perhaps he is a foreshadowing of
Yeah, I don't think I have to be a professional. It's okay. Where is it? This one. I'm just glad I'm finally feeling like I'm understanding what's happening in the game. Yeah. Just gonna keep going along that train. Alright, where is... So last time I went through the left, so I meant to go straight this time. What the hell are these? Why are they running back? What are they bringing back to me? Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's all about knowing the opponent's frames and how to punish, yeah. I'm getting there. But today I versed, I think, 2 jacks, and I've realized I don't like them much due to they're large characters, and it's hard to see their movements. Will there be a Dark Souls 4? You know what? For some reason, I don't think so. Is this... No, it's not poison. I don't know why I thought it would be. Elden Ring isn't Dark Souls 4. No, it's not part of the same universe. It's not the same game. You are tarnished. Here, you are hollowed. It's a different thing. Dead end. Oh, the door. Yeah, I thought I was gonna fight the king, and then the king was like, no good. FromSoft has been upfront about being done after Dark Souls 3. I didn't know, but I just assumed they probably weren't doing another. Oh, I have to wear it. Yeah, stick that baby on your finger. Thanks, man. Which one? King's Ring. Opens the King's Gate. Yeah, it's taking time. Aldea's Keep? How do we say that? Alright, we've never been here before. Goodness me, which one did I do? This one. A bunch of those weird dogs. Any bonfires? Oh, there it is. Technically my second, but I didn't finish my first playthrough. This is me trying to finish the game. My first playthrough, I quit the game after Shrine of Amana. What are they giving me? That looks like a curse and something else. I don't know why I bother reading them sometimes. Also don't know why I'm, why does this one have a box? Your favorite Dark Souls, why? Ah, it is! Alright, who was it that said stone ones are never mimics? Who was it? I was like, this one has locks. I don't think so. How dare you? Alright, get him back. We can try to get it. That thing, like, I was on full health, right? How do I add the count? Oh, I have a command on my stream elements, I think. I do not know the command of the command, unfortunately. I have lost it. And I forget it every time I have to set it up. And then I have a stream deck, and I push a button every time I die. And then the count goes up. I see. Yeah, it's like I use stream elements. Stream elements or something like that that allows you to have commands that goes through a chat. I don't know what you're going to be streaming on. Because in this case I'm doing it through the purple chat. So that's how it works. So it does like an exclamation mark, death, in the chat, and then it puts up a count. Alright. Oh my god, it still ate me. This thing's insane! I need more HP. I stream through your phone. Yeah, just like, I don't know, I would learn how to use commands, I guess. But you're doing it through your phone. That's why, like, I have a button so I don't have to type the whole command. Oh. How would you do it through your phone? Interesting. Alright, we're doing this again. This guy is trolling me. There we go. Oh, he's... What's that? Curse? Some. And that one was quite difficult, actually. God, that thing's terrifying. Is that what it dropped? A dark mask? Too scary for me. No, I don't want to. It looks too scary. If I look scary, it can't be good. That's alright, thank you. Thanks for popping in all the same. Yeah, what's the difference? Was I using this one? No, this one. There's so many souls already. Hmm. I want to level up again. This area isn't what I was expecting. Maybe when we get inside. I did forget to use the boss souls as well. Oh my god, it's dark. Why is it dark? Why does it look like that? Dude, that is so much more than I thought it would be.
There until
Alright.
there until
And maybe one adaptability. No. Or I want to put some in health because I feel like the fact that that chest was able to like hurt me in just one bite.
there until
I had no health. And this is when people ask why I don't use an effigy. And I just never will ever use an effigy. Oh, where is it here? I almost don't like it that they revealed all these other bonfires I haven't come to. I will never get to them. I just realized I haven't set up a thing on stream. I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes you just forget. And now that we're almost finishing the stream, oh. Or you can explore. You just keep the hallway. It is? What do you mean by a hallway? It's just this? Oh, okay. This is why I went back. I knew that was going to be a thing. No, why do we have to attack at the same time? How dare you? Alright, there we go. And I get a human effigy. Thank you. That's all you get. Why is this one lit up? But that one is not. Hurrah for man and then hurrah for woman. Are you kidding me right now? Is that actually what's happening? I don't understand. Oh, how is there another one? Oh my gosh, is that a dragon? No, pulling levers on the ground. Wait, there's a lever? What's in this room? This thing kind of looks cool. Oh. This game feels different when you're scared. Don't you dare what? Am I not meant to light it up? Be wary of left in short of fight. If you light all the torches, something happens. Oh, is it like a... Oh, there's a thing there. That looks optional. Do I go to thing? There's a lever there. Oh! This is misfortune. Must be a boss. Optional? I don't know. Oh. Am I meant to light all the torches? Oh, there's someone there.
Well, you're nicely hollowed, aren't you?
Yes.
Burdened by memories. Burdened by guilt. Now the question, are you ready for more?
Nothing bad happens, but if he locks you out of a quest line if you pull the lever. Oh, so you shouldn't pull the lever?
Long ago, this naive vessel of mine set about devising new spells.
Interesting. I wonder what the lever does. I am just aiming for finishing the game. I'm not really fussed about doing any extra stuff.
By chance, but he did a fine job, I must say. What he sought was strength, and so I decided to demonstrate.
Oh wait, does the lever unleash him?
Slept, I'd find my mark and hunt him down. But my vessel did not approve, and so while I slept, he sealed the both of us away.
Interesting.
I don't have anything against humans, but how is it that you go about defining good and evil?
He does sound
What the gods gave me
crazy.
be so wrong. So what
Yeah, he seems like a boss.
murder on my behalf? If you don't, I'll leave this place and take more lives. Many more. I couldn't give a fig either way, so what's your choice?
Oh my god, what's my choice? For what? No? No. No. It's a no. I didn't even know what the question was. Can I cache the question? Because I feel like you can say yes and never talk to him again. Oh, okay. So I want to not talk to him again. It sounds like a double negative. It's just not letting him out. Sometimes I wish you could play back the dialogue. Because that was a confusing sentence. He asked you to help you with this tomfoolery. Well, I don't want to help him with this tomfoolery. What's this guy's name? It doesn't get out either way. Oh, okay.
Yes, yes, of course. That's what your feeble mind can't begin to.
Okay, whatever. That is okay with me morally. Alright. How weird. Canonically he gets out, but you don't think in game. Yeah, we're not doing what's canon, huh? Ha ha ha. What the hell is that? I do want to end stream soon, to be fair. Yeah. My sword is too tall to walk under. Why is everything being petrified here? Hmm. And it's a sorcery thing. This one does not have locks on it. Therefore real. Oh wait, can I unpetrify that thing? But it looks like an... I'll have a look what's up there. It's not blocking anything, is it? Oh no. They're broken. It's the thing from the one boss. I should have known. Good night. Dude, these things are hard to beat. What the hell? For once in this game, I don't feel overpowered. Doesn't help I have to fight 3 of them at once. Thanks for letting me heal. Can I unstream here? God damn. Are we almost there? Please. We did get through a fair bit today. I think it was like 2 bosses, yeah. 2 bosses, 1 whole area. Our last boss was a bit tough. But I got there eventually. Alright.